Hi there, this is Christina from Proverbs 31 Woman, and today I want to show you how to make sauerkraut. Sauerkraut is really very easy to make, especially if you use the method that I prefer, which is just to use a canning jar or other small jar of about this size. And the good thing about making your own is that unlike most store-bought sauerkraut that has been heated and sort of pasteurized to get rid of all the germs and therefore all the good probiotics that are so good for your gut are killed. But when you make it at home, you preserve those probiotics. And even just one bite of fermented food that has the probiotics in it is, I think it's 1,000 times more probiotics than the best probiotic pill on the market. Anyway, it's quite a bit more. So I'm going to show you how to do this. We start with the cabbage. And we just want to remove the core. So the way I like to do that is I cut it in half. My knife is a little dull, unfortunately. There we go. And now you can see the core here and just cut away at it. Incidentally, before you even start this, what you really should do is wash everything you're going to use. You don't have to sterilize it. In fact, that might not work very well for fermenting, but you do want to wash with soapy water or throw into the dishwasher all your utensils, your cutting board, your jar, wash your hands, that kind of thing. Because we don't want to introduce any bad for you bacteria, anything that's going to make you sick. Okay, the cores are gone. Throw them to the chickens or compost them. Now I just cut each half in half again, and I'm going to start slicing it. Now if I wanted to, I could use a slicing tool or a cabbage slicer, but today all those things are packed, and so I'm going to do it with a knife. It doesn't take that long. I just cut it into strips, and then I'm going to cut it in strips the other way again until I have pieces about the size that I desire. Once your cabbage is sliced, you just put it in a large bowl and you add 1 tablespoon of salt. You do not want iodized salt. That's going to make things taste weird, and it will probably not ferment. Your cabbage won't ferment as well. You can use canning salt if you like. But I prefer just to use plain old sea salt. You do want it finely ground, not coarsely ground. And then you're just going to put your hands in and start massaging it. You can do this for like 5 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. Just keep going. What you're trying to do is get the juice out of the cabbage leaves. So when you're done massaging, you should see that there's quite a bit of liquid down on the bottom of the bowl. I don't know if you can see it, but there's quite a lot. It just looks like water. And that the cabbage is pretty soft. It reminds me a bit in the look of a coleslaw. Of course, there's no mayonnaise or anything in it, but you've softened the cabbage and you have released much of the fluids in it. So now you're just going to grab your jar and you're going to start filling it. And just a little at a time works well. And you're just going to pack this in as tight as you can. One of the nice things about using a small container like this, not only is it a more reasonable amount for most families, but I think that it ferments much faster, but I also think that the cabbage or the sauerkraut comes out more crunchy, which is our preference. It's not at all soggy in your mouth. There's that nice little bit of crunch that you don't often get from a store-bought sauerkraut. Now you can see how when I press down, there's liquid rising in the jar. That's exactly what we want. It's important when you're fermenting that the food always be covered with whatever liquid is in the jar. And that's what keeps bad stuff from growing in your jar. That and just using reasonably clean, kitchen clean I call it, materials like your jar and your bowl. Now there's extra liquid in here, so I'm just gonna pour it in. If you've really massaged your cabbage well, you should not have to add any additional brine. You can if you, just for whatever reason, didn't get a lot of liquid out of it. And if you go to my blog, you can get the formula for that. But basically, it's just salt water. All right, once your cabbage is in your jar, the next thing is to ensure that nothing gets into that jar and that all that cabbage stays under the liquid. So the first thing I would normally do is I would take those hard outer leaves from the cabbage and I would set them aside when I'm chopping the cabbage and now lay them on top here, inside the jar. But as it happens, the cabbage that I'm using today has been sitting around a little while and the outer leaves were kind of looking icky, so I chose not to do that today, and you can choose not to do that too. However, if you do have those leaves, it's an excellent idea. Next is the weight. You don't have to go buy anything fancy. Remember, fermenting is thousands of years old. They didn't have anything fancy. They'd use a rock. And you could do that too, as long as this rock was sanitary. But I prefer to use a jelly jar. And a lot of times I normally just fill these with marbles, but we're still moving and my marbles are packed. So you can have fun with that one, can't you? So anyway, I just filled this with water. Just has to be heavy is the whole idea. And you're just going to set it on top here and press down, and hopefully some liquid is coming out. That's why I've set the jar into a bowl or a saucer. Okay, now that you can see the water level is up high, for me it's up at the rim of the jar, you want to cover it with some cheesecloth or some other kind of cloth that's very clean. And the only reason for this is to keep out insects and debris. Use a rubber band or a piece of string to hold it in place, and you're done. You're just going to set this aside. You want to make sure that it's out of the way, but not in direct sunlight, and not where it's going to get drafts. Another note, if you're homesteading with wood heat like we are, you will find that in the winter, ferments take a lot longer, and that even the flavor may not be as good. That's been my personal experience. So again, if your house feels a little drafty or it's a little cool, if you're a little cool, your ferment's probably a little cool. And I recommend waiting until your house is warmer in the spring and summer and maybe the fall. Again, it takes longer otherwise, and the flavor's not so great. And the longer it sits, the less you're going to get that crunchiness, which is part of what I like about using a mason jar for making sauerkraut, is you get that little bit of crunch. So you should check this every day. Make sure that the water level is up high above the cabbage. If it's not, you're going to need to make a brine, and you can find, again, the recipe for that on my blog, and add it. It's very important that it stay underwater. After about 5 days, I recommend tasting it, because we all have different ideas of how we think sauerkraut should taste. Some of us like it more sour, some of us like it less sour. So start at day 5 tasting it. I find mine usually takes about 7 days before we want to eat it. And then you stick it someplace cool when it's the flavor you like. Stick it in the fridge, stick it in the cellar, whatever, as long as it's cool. It will continue to ferment. So another good reason to do a small batch is I know that once I have the flavor I like, I can keep it that way. If I had a huge crock of it, it would probably get more sour than my family would like during storage. So you can easily rotate these, start a new batch when you know this batch is ready, or even sooner, and have lots of them going. And it's healthy, it's cheaper than store-bought, better for you than store-bought, really easy, a great way to use the cabbage that you have grown in your fall or winter or spring garden. And I hope you try it and let me know what you think. Please visit my blog, Proverbs 31 Woman, and if you like the video, please like and share. And don't forget to subscribe too. Thank you.